Shalom. Erev Tov. Good evening. We are live. Good evening. I am streaming live from Israel. This is TMS Roundtable Global. My name is Dr. Tova Goldfein. My guest tonight, we're not on our typical Monday night. We're on a Tuesday night, but it's a Wednesday morning, 8 hours ahead in Melbourne, Australia. And I am not only privileged to be here every week. I am honored to meet with amazing doctors and therapists and people that are healing others, psychiatrists and psychologists and movie directors and authors, and so many people that have healed themselves, that have invested time and energy into their journey, people that have inspired us and that have educated us. And no one is like the Dalai Lama. We are normal blokes healing ourselves. Gamani, me as well. And I'm so happy to be in this field as a healer, helping others find their way. And so I invited a friend that we kind of have a little history, but that's beside the point. But Dr. Michael Black is a chiropractor in Australia. He happened to have been in Israel, but that's part of the story, 40 years ago. And now he is very involved in martial arts, in karate, enough to write a book. And we spoke earlier about the relationship between the mind and body through the martial arts, which is a very somatic body-mind way of exercising as well as calming the brain. So, check it, Dr. Tova. Let's hear from Dr. Michael Black. I'm so happy that you joined me in your morning and in my night. Thank you so much for taking the time. Tell us a little bit about, you got to be a chiropractor, and then why karate? I mean, it could have been anything. Why martial arts, Michael?
Okay. Well, firstly, I was involved in karate from the age of 10. And as is often the case, it wasn't my choice. My father said to me one day, I was speaking to Mr. Sebrano, who's a local karate instructor. In fact, my father was the local chemist in the community.
Whoa.
And the instructor was
you had an office with him.
He's now a chiropractor.
Wow. Well, amazing.
But he was a pharmacist for 25 years. And It just happened that one of his customers was a karate instructor. This is back in 1971. And he said, like most dads would, it might be a good idea to send my son along. And my dad came home one night and he said, I was speaking to this chap and we thought it was a good idea to send you to karate. I said, I still remember the age of 10 or 11. I said, what part of that is a good idea? So I went along and I was immersed in this, another world of Japanese and unusual customs and traditions. But like anyone being immersed in another language in a new country, you pick it up, and it became a part of my fibre. And in my early, through into my early teens,
you never stopped. You never stopped. So we're talking 50-something years.
53 years, but I've stopped and started along the way. It hasn't been continuous. We study, we get married, we have kids, life gets in the way, and we often then come back to something.
But it was always in something. But then once you evolved, into this Eastern way of breathing and moving, there was something that drew you to it in a big way.
Well, in my earliest years, I was a very skinny kid. I was not born an athlete. And I still remember the early school years and not being able to keep up, in the footy and cricket and soccer. But the mental discipline that I was picking up from karate training helped me to build that stamina and endurance and keep going. Wow. And later on, if I fast forward to, I don't know what you call the last year of high school, we call it matriculation, or whatever that final year is. It's a hard year for everyone.
Okay. Yeah, transitional.
Right. And I was competing to get into university with everyone else. And I fell back on my karate and meditation to help me study because I was not the best focused student. And I thought, I've got to draw on something here. I've got, 6 months to get this together. And sometimes we go into ourselves, and because we have our own answers. And I said to myself, okay, what's always worked for you? And the answer for me was karate and meditation. So I would practice that every night. Instead of studying longer, I would train, improve my focus ability. And what ended up happening, I was actually entering medicine. That's what I originally wanted to study. And I ended up coming with a top of the state grade in English, which gave me the marks to get into medical studies. And people say to me, but you're not a literist, you're not an English scholar. How did you top the state in English? And people wouldn't believe that I was meditating and practicing karate to give me that focus for study.
Wow. Amazing. Listen, we all know in my world, our language is about mindfulness and meditation and the breath. And, it's something so common conversation in the Eastern world of healing. I mean, but so you got that again so young, you incorporated it so young, then you went to chiropractic school, which is all about the mind body. People don't realize that we have a very philosophical background learning as a chiropractor, the connection of this this neurological force that's connected to really some divine force, because we're not going to talk about what makes a baby. I mean, this is just not science.
Mm-hmm.
So we learn in chiropractic school about the, internal, external, and the connect, and we help to make sure that's flowing. And, with chronic pain and autoimmune disease, something's imbalanced, something's off. There's miscommunication. So
That's right.
here, so what's so attractive about talking to you about the martial arts is not only how many people are doing yoga and qigong and tai chi to help calm the brain. You at a very young age were able to take that on and to keep developing it, and now use it in your chiropractic treatment,
Well,
obviously.
well, I have to say, in those early days of chiropractic college, I was in my late teens. My karate there was no crossover with chiropractic that I was aware of. But I remember in the early days of learning to adjust, and we were working on each other, of course, as students practiced on each other in chiropractic college. And I remember them saying, you have to have a very stable stance when you're adjusting the patient. Otherwise, you'll fall over or you'll fall on top of the patient. You've got to protect your own back. And when they were demonstrating the stances, particularly the side posture technique, I thought, oh, this is drawing on my karate roots, because the first thing we learnt was a stable stance, a stable foundation,
Right.
so that you couldn't be pushed over.
Right.
So even learning the art of chiropractic, I was implementing the martial arts in my own movements.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, and another thing regarding, I'm going to bring the conversation always to, the topic of chronic pain. In something like martial arts, you're people are falling, people are kind of sparring, as you said, and it's not the kind of pain it's like you get to understand sensation. You get to understand something not comfortable, but you're not hurt. So there's a kind of a strength of the brain to differentiate between being attacked or being like. Explain that, because what do they explain to you in martial arts about being hurt or pain or feeling attacked? Like, how do you put it into perspective regarding somebody who comes in your office with chronic pain?
Okay, that's an interesting question. I think a way that I would put it is perception. We all have our own story, and it's amazing how half a dozen people can be in the same room and experience the same situation, but they'll all walk away and retell what happened in a different way. We have different experiences of the same thing. We could eat the same food, smell the same thing, but we'll all describe it differently. So uh, my karate instructor to this day, he says, "Now, I want you to get in there and do this exercise. And by the way, it's mind over matter. I don't mind if it hurts, so it doesn't matter." And
Yeah,
that's his, and
yeah,
that's what he says about mind over matter. In other words, you you have your own story about what you're experiencing and feeling. Right now, I'm really not concerned with that. So
yeah,
some people get very embedded in that, and their
yeah,
conversation is all about their pain, and they
yeah,
describe it. Uh, and others, and some of us compartmentalize that and say that's not necessary information right now. It's a bit like wearing a watch. You put your watch on your wrist, and for the first 30 seconds, you're aware of that sensation. And after a while, your brain filters it out and says, that's not useful information. I don't
yeah,
need to feel that much anymore.
yeah,
You walk into the kitchen, you smell the cooking, but after 30 seconds, your brain's still aware of it, but
yeah.
you're no longer conscious.
Well,
So,
yeah, I'm going to interrupt you like a good Israeli. So, when people say that if you focus on your breath, you won't feel
mm,
pain.
mm,
And so it is a focus. It's absolutely a mindfulness. And I must comment that there's exactly the best answer you could have given about perception. We all experience pain differently. So when everyone wants to know why, if someone feels what they feel, it's not going to happen. We're not going to feel it the same way. We're going to feel it determining on, this is predictive coding,
mm,
determining on our past or what happened or our relationship with pain. That's how we're going to experience pain. And then, you add trauma to it and you have, you have the matrix.
yeah.
And so continue on. So this is fascinating. So talk more about, you're looking at people in pain all day coming into your office and you're helping them with a relaxing of their spine. You're helping them with, an alignment. And
Mm.
what if people are suffering with chronic pain and they're not getting better with, half a dozen chiropractic treatments? Like what's going on? How do
Yeah.
you manage that?
Well, what I looked at in the last, I'll say 20 years, since we've had this digital era, uh, we've always sat, we've always worked, we've always studied, but most of us were getting up and down, we were writing, and ever since Wi-Fi and all this digital technology came in and mobile phones, we're sitting for longer and longer and longer, and we're not sitting straight, we're slouched over like gorillas, and the human posture has been failing. You and I would probably say 30 years ago, we didn't see teenagers with the problems that we're seeing today. Now they're coming in bent over like bananas. They've got migraine headaches.
Mm-hmm.
I often say to a teenager, do you get headaches? And they say, just the normal ones.
Yeah, so just
Yeah,
normal, ordinary pain. You know,
I mean, I only get a headache when I'm hungover.
yeah.
So I don't know what a normal headache is.
Well, we
Uh,
learned in school that structure affects function. And
mm,
that's so powerful about our structure and affects function. And so I think a lot of people who get chiropractic care don't get chronic pain because they're attending to their structure.
yes.
Their function is better.
But what I saw in this last 20 years was a basic deterioration in the human function, in people's ability to sit straight, stand straight, and of course then to move. And I don't need to tell you as a chiropractor, when we stop moving properly, that's the beginning of the end. It's
Mhm.
a steady decline from there. So I would ask my patients, just show me, can you stand on one leg? Can you balance? Can you actually move your shoulders and roll them around? And I found they couldn't do simple things. So this was without conscious deliberation. I would draw on exercises and techniques that I'd used in karate training. And
Wow.
I'd say, just do this with me. See if you can do that. It wasn't that I was teaching them karate. I was just using it as a tool.
Great tool.
You know, there are a lot of exercises that I learned as a chiropractor that I think are useless. They never did anything. And I thought half of these conventional exercises don't work. But I was sharing with my patients what worked for me, and blow me down, it worked for them.
Yeah. And I have to say, I don't remember in chiropractic school. I mean, it was it's 36 years ago for me. I don't remember understanding about the breath and how important the breath is. I mean, now I'm learning it because I see how important it is with the parasympathetic nervous system and, creating, happy chemicals. I mean, like I knew about endorphins, but it's so powerful to know about the breath. And you learned about that in karate. I mean, the importance of the breath and breathing and moving and focusing and calming the brain. Can you talk a little bit about that? Calming the brain, because it's a very important thing in my work with we call it brain pain, because the pain is in your brain and we need to calm the nervous system down in order for the fight and flight. So can you talk about it from the Eastern arts, because it would be helpful for the listeners to hear, because whether they're doing karate or not, just breathing enough is the medicine.
Well, I'll dumb it down because I like to simplify things. I'm not a natural fighter. And when I go into the karate dojo and I see these black belts, they're twice as big as me, they're twice as fast, and they're half my age. So I've got no advantage whatsoever. And the first thing that we go into when someone comes into our space is the fight or flight reflex. So the first thing we do
Say it again, the final
fight or flight.
Fight or flight? Yeah,
the sympathetic response. So the first thing that happens, someone comes into your personal space, and even though it's in a dojo, it's a safe environment, supposedly. But let me tell you, when they hit you, it's not so safe. So the natural response is to close your mouth, tighten up, and stop breathing. And that's the first thing that works against you. And the first thing you do is you use up all your oxygen, you get weak and tired, you fatigue very, very quickly. And my instructor would yell at me from the sidelines, breathe, just breathe.
Wow.
It wasn't about using my hands or my feet or technique. I would forget to breathe because I was frightened. And and the first thing I had to learn was just keep breathing, keep the oxygenation up.
Wow.
So, of course, one of the big problems with failing posture, I'll say poor posture, is we round our shoulders, we reduce our ribcage volume, we reduce the amount of oxygen that we're taking in, we jam up all our intercostal and rib muscles and accessory respiratory muscles, and then we become neck-shoulder breathers because we're bent over like an asthmatic.
I actually learned this from Rose. She reminds me of it all the time. I forget that when we're deep breathing, we're activating even more the vagal nerve, which is connecting to all, the happy chemicals and all the good hormones. It's helping to activate the parasympathetic, and it's just like I forget what they call it. There's a name they call the vagal nerve. The wandering nerve. But I want to mention, so important, because also when we're in chronic pain, Michael, we think if we stop, the pain will go away. In fact, what happens is that the body needs blood and oxygen. So I always say, please go on the other side of the pain. Please go into the pain, move through it, and go onto the other side of where you stopped, and you'll see that it won't get worse. You'll be able to, you'll breathe, you're breathing through it, and you'll have been on the other side. You'll have overcome and seen that you can pass through that painful place, because the body's screaming pain up here, and the pain, is processed in the same place as the anger and the fear. So it's processed here. I know you're feeling it in your body. I'm not underestimating your pain, please. But if people can understand that, and the fear is way worse than the pain, this would be very helpful to some of our clients. And the breath helps you to bring safety and to calm.
Yes. The medical model, as you're well aware, for many years, say for a sprained ankle, was, rest for a week or two. Don't do anything until it's better. And then, of course, in more recent years, they realised resting for more than 2 days is not optimal.
On the record, movement is the key. And we learned, I remember I took some rehab courses, that you got a neck collar on, go start moving your arms and your legs. Even with the neck collar, you could start the rehab right away. And so that's what you're saying. Mention more about that. So
that's it.
If we have a sprained ankle, we got to get it moving. Blood and oxygen. Do you talk more about that?
Well, we know about the healing process from basic pathology. We have to restore circulation and ensure that scar tissue doesn't get laid down. And the only way a joint's going to do that is to move. So as soon as the swelling is reduced somewhat and we can start to move again, we must, whether it's our neck or our lower back or our ankle. But the human, we have an innate protection. We have an innate drive to protect and guard ourselves. So the average patient would say, "Oh, how long do you think I should rest? I don't want to do anything to upset it. I'm sure I should take 2 weeks off work and just stay in bed and not do anything." And of course, that's the worst thing that you could do.
Wow.
I've never had a hip replacement, but I'm told now that within 12 hours of surgery, they get them out of bed bearing weight and moving. They don't leave them in bed anymore.
What are the bones for? They're there to bear weight. They do better. They do better. And stress on the bone makes it stronger.
Yeah. So when we keep moving and keep breathing, one of the things that I learned, I never properly understood this, but 20 years ago, I was doing my master's in pediatrics, chiropractic pediatrics. And for a long time, all I did was treat a lot of children, babies. One of the things I learned about newborns, and I didn't know this because I hadn't had my own children, but when you have a newborn baby, they do what we call diaphragmatic breathing.
Wow.
They breathe with their abdomen. If you watch the baby lying on its back, its abdomen is rising and falling, not its chest.
Wow.
And then later on, we learn to chest breathe. But young infants are actually diaphragmatic breathers. And it's innate in us to take that breath fully not into our abdomens, but right down into our diaphragm, which is one of the largest muscles of the body, but we don't know how to use it. Innately we learn to use it, but we learn to unuse it.
It's so true. And the body gets used to the shallow breathing, and then it can affect everything from A to Z regarding asthma and breathing. And so this is another reason why, things like karate and qigong and tai chi are just so powerful.
We do a movement called Qatar. Anyone that's done karate might know we do different forms and movements of kata. Some of them are very fast and explosive, and some are very slow. And this is a small screen here, but we're doing small, circular, relaxed movements, but at the same time we're breathing. And we're learning nasal diaphragmatic breathing to force oxygen through the body. And this has a healing effect. We're perfusing ourselves with oxygen. But you know, the other fascinating thing about the diaphragm, as I think about it chiropractically, the nerve supply of the diaphragm is C5 from the fifth cervical vertebra in the neck. And how interesting that, I'll turn sideways here. None of us with mobile phones are sitting up straight.
Come in the middle of your screen. Oh, yeah, exactly. Very good.
We've all heard the term text neck.
Or anterior forward head posture.
Correct. So people are losing the natural cervical curve in the spine, which we call the lordosis. They end up with disc degeneration in the lower part of the neck, particularly C5 to C7. And the phrenic nerve, which supplies the diaphragm, is coming right out of that area, as are some of the back muscles, the accessory respiratory muscles. They're all getting their nerve supply from the neck. So anyone that's got their head down in their mobile phone and their laptop all day long, they're losing that natural engineering movement of the neck. They're actually going to affect their breathing, so they're going to reduce their natural breathing. And unless you can teach them how to use their neck and how to breathe again, they're on a fast, we call it a slippery slope to nowhere.
So important, so important. And, you know, the muscles, they call them the orphan organ. They're just not getting their value and their worth and how they're levers of our body. And, you know, this is not really science, but there is a lot of language about how trauma lives in our muscles, and the muscles record the memory. And the fact is, the brain does record. There was some kind of fact about the brain. It remembers. The body remembers everything. Look, the body keeps the score. This is back to my world of language. The body keeps the score, which is written by a professor who is very well known because he's talking about the trauma that's sitting in the body.
For sure.
And that the physical body is expressing, you know, and it's expressing many times through pain. And if someone's not getting better after a few adjustments, you know, or not improving, there's something deeper going on. And chiropractors are trained to look and say, well, what else is going on? And, and then to be recommending exercise and it's a natural selection of just to like go do some yoga, go do some breathing, try some meditation and mindfulness. And these people are not they're not in chronic pain because they're really living a more balanced life, much more balanced. And I mean, just off the record, I meet so many people with tinnitus and chronic dizziness, and their C2 is always out, their neck is always tight. So I say, if you just go home and stretch, you don't need me. Just go home and stretch and breathe. Breathe deeply and hold that stretch for a good 10 seconds. Be patient. You know, have this and we talked about this before the show. What does exercise do? What does movement do? It connects us to our body. It introduces us to our body. And when we know our body, it doesn't go against us. We're one. So can you talk a little bit about that, of knowing one's body by exercising or doing martial arts?
Absolutely. I would say that for many of us, we've never been introduced to our body. We've got a couple of arms hanging off us, and we don't know. We know innately what to do with them, but we don't know how to train them. We don't know how to augment them. And we were talking earlier, and I said there's no manual for the human body. You know, we didn't pop out of mum and someone gave us the manual. I can go and buy a car and I'll get a manual at least. But sometimes we need to find someone to explain to us how to use our body, how to improve it, and how not to be frightened of it. so that we go into, because a lot of specialists will say, oh, you better rest that, you better protect it, don't use it. Whereas our philosophy is, we're going to show you how to use it more than you've ever used it before.
I love it.
I've got my patients doing chin-ups, and they say, I can't even do one chin-up. I can't even lift my body off the ground. I say, well, you better start learning, because one day you might have to, get yourself out of danger. I'll use an analogy, something I haven't shared with you. I've been sailing for 50 years. Since the time I was a young child, I've been on the water. I have a love affair with the sea. Now I call myself the old man in the sea, but I realised from the time I was a child, when the boat capsized, I had to be able to pull myself back into the boat. There was no one to haul me up. And you have to have the back and the arm strength to pull yourself into the boat. And even when I was out on the ocean in my 30s and I was sailing, I had a philosophy that if I couldn't pull myself back into my own yacht, I shouldn't be out there. And in my 30s and 40s, if I was in the water, I could still propel myself 1.5 meters out of the water to grab the side of the deck and haul myself up onto the deck of a yacht.
Yeah.
And I said to myself, when I can no longer lift my own body weight, and that's using my back muscles, then I shouldn't be out there.
Yeah.
Because one day there'll be no one to haul me back on my own boat.
No, it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense.
So when a patient tells me they can't do one chin-up, they've got no strength in their back, they've got no understanding of how their body works.
Yeah.
So I teach them basic calisthenics. And it might be going to the local park and finding a monkey bar, and they might just be hanging from their fingertips for 10 seconds. They don't even need to do a movement. I've got a very old book that's falling apart on my bookshelf, and the title is beautiful. I think it was printed in the 60s. And the title is, Did You Ever See a Monkey with a Back Problem?
Oh my God, I love it. Oh my God, what an amazing book.
Yeah, and the concept is, these animals, we don't credit them with any intelligence, but they're hanging and they're swinging. What does a cat and a dog do when it wakes up in the morning? It puts
Stretches. I love that.
It puts its legs out and it stretches. So we can learn a lot from the animals because they're doing this innately.
So true.
And, one of the fascinating things of the martial arts is we emulate a lot of animal movements. So if you look at Kung Fu, they talk about this as the monkey form and the tiger form and the lion.
Same thing with yoga. Same thing with yoga. The lion, the lotus, the tree.
That's
we must say this, and I say it all the time. When we're in better shape, when we're more flexible, we just take injury better.
Yeah.
We just handle the emotional injury, the physical injury, the physiological injury, the chemical injury. We just handle it better. We recuperate better.
That's
we
it.
Respond better. We become resilient, because life is full of falls and getting up and falls and getting up, like in karate. And
I'm glad you mentioned falls, because something I was going to add. I think globally we're reading more about seniors and falls, and we're constantly hearing about people who are falling over. They end up with a hip fracture, and again, that's the beginning of the end. There's a terrible mortality rate for people who have had a serious fall within 12 months. And I know here in Australia, they have a lot of physios running falls programs simply to teach people balance and hopefully trying to prevent falls from happening. So my concept of doing martial arts at any age, I'm in my early 60s, but we have people in their 70s training with us.
Amazing.
And we say they'll be there till they drop, because it's forever. And if you can retain balance and stand on one leg, here's an interesting concept for anyone. Every time we whenever we walk, we pick one foot up, and most of the time, one foot's in the air, about to fall down, about to be placed, and we're actually standing on one foot.
Good
Most of the
point.
time when we're
Amazing
walking.
point. Amazing point.
So if I was to take a freeze frame of you when you're walking, one foot is up and one foot is down, right at that second, you're placing all your entire life on the balance of one limb. And all the muscles from the lower leg up through the hips, particularly the hip adductors and the brain, are all working together in concert to save your life so you don't fall over and break your scone. And we do that in
Amazing. Think about that. It's amazing, amazing point.
And imagine when you step off the curb and you've got to place your foot 5-6 inches lower, your brain has to go through a whole computation of how far do I adjust to place my foot down. I've got one foot up, I've got one foot down. We literally take our life into our hands every time we do that.
It's an amazing point. And not even to talk about how we fall. I mean, if people would fall, if we could fall and respond to what happened and not react, we're also going to recuperate better and recover better.
Sure.
Because there's the fear factor, and there's the hesitation, and there's the anticipation, and so another reason to take on one of these more somatic exercises like karate is because you want to know your body, you want to be in touch with your body, you want to trust your body. And I think martial arts can help people trust their body in a way.
That's it. One of the, this might be a cliche in the martial arts, but we often say that people ask me, what's karate all about? And we often say it's about the journey within and learning to know yourself.
So important.
Forget the physical action of kicking and striking and defending. Really, the journey of karate and probably any martial art is to learn to know yourself. And really, most of us don't know ourselves. We don't know what we're capable of. We don't know what we can produce. We don't know our potential. So for me, my personal journey of still, I'll be grading for my black belt in karate in a year. I happen to turn 62 in 2 days.
Oh, wow.
So I have a 12-month journey to train for my black belt, and it's about exploring my potential and the journey within.
Wow. But see, Michael, you're not scared to go deep inside, and sometimes it's scary for people to go within.
Oh, it is scary, and I'm not fearless by any stretch. Now, there are some pretty large black belts that I have to contend with, and when they advance towards me, my innate response is to move away. And they say to me, "Hey, why are you running away from me?" I say, "Hey, I might be crazy, but I'm not stupid. I want to get as far."
Peaceful. What about the peaceful warrior? Warrior.
But getting to my innate response is fear and flight. But the journey within tells me, no, actually, I should be advancing and doing something about it.
That's so powerful.
That's a very hard primitive reflex to fight.
Yeah, and when I think of karate, I think of somebody chopping, like a piece of wood, and that's like they're not feeling pain. They're doing that, but not feeling pain.
Well, that's a learned. I won't say. Look, chopping a piece of wood is that's a metaphor. Okay. That's what it is. That's a metaphor because we can't necessarily go and chop the next person next to us, so we have to find something else. At least the board won't complain and argue with us.
But how are they doing that with their hand? The speed of the hand?
Well, there's a lot of dynamics that come into it.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things, and it doesn't happen overnight.
No.
We always laugh in America. I'm sorry that you're American, but
it's okay.
The great joke is that in America you can sign up any martial art, and within a year you'll be guaranteed to have a black belt.
Right. I hear
You know,
you.
it's a 7 to 10 year journey that you can't
Listen,
program
it's
yourself.
Eastern philosophy that created acupuncture. It's Eastern philosophy that created the meridians. It's Eastern philosophy that they're doing something called psychic surgery, where they can literally, open you up with a knife and you feel no pain.
That's right.
So
That's right.
this is something that I'm sure, like if there were statistics or people having less chronic pain in the Asian countries, I don't know. I mean, they might be stressed more about their government more than anything else. But
Yeah,
someone told me that in China, the doctors are paid not to see you. It's something they
I'm
call
sure.
well medicine.
Yeah,
Like the well, rather than in Israel, it's called the kupat cholim. It's the sick place. It's the well
yeah.
place. It's fascinating to me.
I worked in Kopachol in Qadera. I'm very
Yeah,
familiar
of
with it.
course. It's not far from me, but so I find it fascinating, and I'm sure that if there were statistics, there'd be
Mm.
people that have less chronic pain, and in Eastern, or what people that that don't have chronic pain are doing martial arts, or
Mm.
participating in qigong, or participating
So,
in yoga.
yeah, something that just occurred to me. This is a parallel. I'm not going off on a tangent, but it occurs to me as you're mentioning Eastern cultures, and I'm thinking about how childbirth is often takes place in the East, with women squatting. That's a natural phenomenon. It's not taught to be associated with pain. It's not taught culturally that it's a traumatic event. And, we hear that Thai women are squatting down in the rice paddies and birthing and then going back to work.
Yeah, right. No problem. They bring the child right to the breast. At some point they cut off. I mean, this is what we learned in chiropractic school.
Yeah. So,
That's what people did, and then it became, yeah. So that's so interesting. Why did you bring that up again?
well, you said, Eastern cultures and
Yeah,
Eastern acupuncture and
yeah,
martial arts. And I'm just thinking culturally in the East, there are a lot of things
yeah,
that are very different from the West.
yeah.
Uh, Something associated with movement that I learned many, many years ago. You're going to laugh at this, that I was in a lecture being given by a midwife when I was studying pediatrics, and she was talking about belly dancing. I thought, where on earth is she going with this belly dancing? And we associate belly dancing with something that's semi-erotic, that's portrayed as something women do for the pleasure of men. And she explained, she said, in Middle Eastern countries, the art of belly dancing was taught generationally from women to daughters to granddaughters. It's taught as a preparation for childbirth
Whoa, I love it.
because they're taught how to move their pelvis, how to engage their core, and they're preparing for an
I love
important
it.
task. And it's interesting to me, part of my sailing background is I've studied a lot of the Pacific cultures and anthropology as well, because years ago I had a plan to go sailing around the South Pacific. And isn't it interesting that the hula dancing of the Polynesians is so similar to the belly dancing of the Middle East? I'm sure that they're doing it for very, very similar reasons.
Yeah,
Has nothing to do with the pleasure of men, I can tell you.
no. Fascinating, Michael. Fascinating, fascinating, and it's all. There's absolutely a cause and effect of what you're talking about. It makes perfect sense.
It's all movement and
Belly
function.
dancing is very popular, of course, here in Israel and in the Middle Eastern cultures. So it's just fascinating, really, really
Yeah.
fascinating.
I'll
So,
share it. If I can share
please,
a quick
yeah,
example of something I did with a patient many years ago.
please.
I had this patient. He's a musician, wonderful jazz trumpeter, and he strained his pelvis. He was in the surf and he got dumped by a big wave on the beach. And I don't know, here in Australia we have huge coastlines and big surf. I think in California something similar. Anyway, he came in and his pelvis was all jammed up. And for the life of me, I could not get his pelvis moving again, even with my adjustments. And I said to him, I said, again, reaching into my intuition, I said, years ago, I did some Latin dancing. And I did about 3 or 4 years of Latin dancing. And I found it actually complemented my martial arts because I was learning to move my pelvis in a way I'd never ever moved it.
Wow.
It sounds laughable, but I said it. I remember doing the rumba and learning to move my pelvis in a figure-8 movement that I'd never ever done. And it took a while to learn, but once I'd learned it, I couldn't unlearn it. I
Well, I
never
love
forgot
it.
it. I said to him, you need to do the rumba. And he started laughing. He said, what, you're going to teach me Latin dancing? I said, I only threw it out there as a thought. I said, that is actually what you need. I said, stand up. I said, put your hands on my shoulders. And I taught him the rumba.
I love it.
And,
I love
and,
it.
and he was laughing. He said, I hope there are no cameras in here. I said, you're going to practice this for you know what? After a week, he came back. He said, I can't believe it. I can move again. The pain's gone.
Yes, absolutely. And we haven't even talked about what dancing does to the brain and the happy chemicals. Forget even that.
Sure.
Forget even the music, but just the actual motion of, and in this guy's particular pelvis. That's amazing. What other story do you want to? We're gonna round up in the next 10 minutes. But what else do you feel like? What would you want to leave with the audience, with the listeners, about healing chronic pain? It's not just about the structural adjustment or but what would you suggest to people who have chronic pain, for 5-6 years, who have tinnitus, who have, and they're not getting better with chiropractic? They're not, like, would they come to you and say, doc, like, adjustments aren't helping, what should I do?
I would say learn a movement that you've never performed. Now, for example, we have a lot of Chinese and Indians migrating to this country, and they're coming from inland countries that don't have a coastline. A lot of them have never learned to swim. They've never been
Wow.
in the water. We're a coastal nation, so we all swim. But a lot of these people have never learned to swim. And I say, you need to go to the pool and do some swimming. And they say, I can't swim. I say, well, that's probably then you've just reinforced what you need. You've been sitting on your ass all day long. You're a computer programmer. You get up and all you do is sit in front of the computer. Then you sit and watch TV and you sit and eat. It's no wonder you're in pain. So go to that pool. I don't care if you're in waist deep water. You need to learn a movement that your body's never experienced.
Wow.
And then you'll start to turn on and fire up some of those neurons that have been dormant, that have never learned how to move and be used. And you'll switch on new pathways.
What a great advice. And the body's made for movement. The body was made for movement. God made this body in all of his or her wisdom to move. Muscles are levers, bones are weight bearing, ligaments, joints, connective tissue, tendons.
Yeah. The other simple concept, I would say, we often say use it or lose it. Yeah. Now, when we tell a child something 3 or 4 times, the first thing they do is say, Dad, you've already told me. I've heard it. Stop telling me the same thing. But, use it or lose it. I don't care if I have to tell you 20 times. If that's the truth, if that's what you need, I'll keep berating you until you do it because you don't know what's best for you. I'm going to tell you.
And there's nothing new under the sun. There are universal laws of healing.
Sure. I think there's a song, Everything Old is New Again.
Yeah.
And I love it when someone comes up with a new fitness industry. We have Zumba and all these other things. They're recreating, but they're not new. They're very old. They're as old as the sun.
Repetitive intelligence.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's wonderful. That's wonderful.
Yeah. By the way, if we've got to wrap up, I just want to tell you this very amusing story.
Please.
Because I haven't shared this with you. My father is my partner in the chiropractic practice, He's
Yeah.
87 years old. He turns 88 in a couple of months. And
Unbelievable.
during COVID and lockdowns, I didn't let him come into the clinic because I was trying to protect him. So for some months, I didn't let him work. But he was sitting at home, not moving, watching TV. It wasn't doing him any good. Only a few months ago, he bought himself a scooter, and he now scoots around the courtyard at home on his scooter at 87 years old. And he was shaky when he started. Now he's got perfect balance and coordination.
Unbelievable.
He's taught himself to move and balance again because he recognized he was losing it.
Unbelievable. And we literally carved a new pathway.
Yeah. And what can you imagine that's doing for the neurons in his brain?
Amazing. Amazing. And so if somebody's in horrible pain, Michael, they just the pain, the dials up number 10, what would you suggest to them to I always say to, go through it, breathe through it, go on the other side of the pain. That's Tova's words. What would you say to someone who can move, scared to move? What would be your advice, your
I
suggestion?
think I think the journey is often very hard by yourself, and sometimes you have to find the right person to help you. For me, I have wonderful karate instructors, but for someone else, it might be a swimming teacher, it might be a dance teacher. Uh, we don't have to go through the journey by ourselves. Sometimes we need someone to gently lead us into the journey before we
Yeah,
take it on and say, I didn't realize that's so good for me.
yeah.
I'm doing so much better. We need to be pushed and prompted. So you shouldn't be scared to reach out and try and find that person who can help to take you on the next
Beautiful.
journey.
Great advice. It's like you answered all my questions and you answered them beautifully, and you're a light, a real light. And
Thank you.
imagine that you reflect the doctor within with all of your clients, and they're lucky to have you and your dad on his scooter, you on your boat, your dad on his scooter. and
Believe me, not every patient wants to hear what we have to offer.
I know. And what I love about chiropractic is that we do empower people
Mm.
to find their own doctor. And I think this last hour has been very empowering to let people know that the human body is an amazing mechanism, and it's made
Mm.
to move, and it's made to
Mm.
heal. It's striving for healing. It's striving to succeed. And the brain is a piece of flesh that we tell what to do. We got to take back that power.
Yes. The only other thing that I'd add is I think that the imagination and fantasy is a wonderful, wonderful thing. It's probably one
Beautiful.
of the few qualities of human. I would urge anyone who's having trouble moving, go onto YouTube and watch people doing Latin dancing, watch people doing calisthenics, because if you even for a minute can fantasize that you might be able to do that, and even to do it in your head, even to dream it and imagine that you're on the floor moving like that, that's already the first step.
Exactly. That's actually true scientific visualization. You visualize it, and the brain doesn't realize it's not true.
Mm.
This is science. This is amazing. It was amazing advice. Really, really, absolutely great suggestions on the record. I'm so happy that you picked up on everything I wanted to talk about, and really gave beautiful, helpful advice, insights for healing. And I've been advertising the book. You wrote a book with your master about, he was the first karate teacher in Australia. You wrote a beautiful book. Can you just talk for a minute about the book? Because it's all over
Yes,
Facebook now.
I met him 52 years ago when I was a 10-year-old, and about 5 years ago, because I'm still training with him, he said to me, I've always wanted to write my story. I said,
Wow.
well, he said, I hope you can find someone to help you with that. I said, if you want a couple of tips, I don't know anything about writing or publishing, uh, but you should ideally find someone that's always been mentored by you, that still trains to this day, that grew up in the same suburb or was around when you were a younger man. And that's probably the right person for you to find. He said, well, that's you. I said, no, I'm not looking to write a book. I don't know anything about it. But if I go back a step to fantasy, for a fleeting moment, I fantasized that I might be an author and write a book. And the
Wow.
fantasy said, well, maybe I could. Who knows?
Unbelievable. Wow. It looks like a beautiful book. He looks like a beautiful man. A beautiful man.
He's an incredible man. His name is
Wow.
Tino. He'll turn 82 this year. When he's in Melbourne, he stays with me and we train together.
Wow.
And if I thought at 62 that I'm having difficulty training karate, this guy cleans me up. He
Wow.
moves like lightning. He has the strength and stamina of a lion. And
Wow.
his father lived till he was 104. So he expects to be still doing this when he's 100 years old.
Amazing. He's a beautiful soul. He's a beautiful soul. I posted the book everywhere I could. And I'll send out your website
Thank you.
later on.
It's a wonderful tale because he was a Pacific Islander and he was uneducated. He got thrown out of high school. He never graduated from university. And it's a wonderful tale of resilience and courage and inner strength without intellectual education.
Wow. Wow. Beautiful. Beautiful. Such a beautiful, beautiful story. I'm so happy to spend this hour with you. I hope to meet you in person.
Thank
I
you,
know
Chloe.
we're a big ocean away, but thank you so much for spending your time and opening up your heart and sharing some amazing stories. And I always say we will meet again. Remember this face. Anyway, have a lovely day, and you'll meet Rose also.
Thank
She
you.
couldn't be here this morning, and
My love to all my friends in Israel.
yeah. Well, feeling the love. So good to see you. Have a
Thank you,
wonderful
Tova.
day.
Let's roll.
God
Bye-bye.
bless. Okay, we're going to be